Hotep. Welcome to Journey in the Self. I'm your host, Sarah. Today, our topic is how to change the world, an inside job. This year, I decided that we would begin the year focusing on the internal and work our way to the external. We spent a lot of time in the prior year dealing with the external things that are going on in the political realm, the looking behind the scenes at those who control world affairs and identifying who they are, what they're doing, what their tactics have been. And all these things end up affecting us on the outside in the external world. But I think it's also necessary, and probably more necessary, not probably, it is more necessary for us to talk about the inner world and be focused on the inner world, because it is the inner world that prepares us to deal effectively with the external world. And when I say the inner world is the spirit world, the realm of our true self, our inner being. And when we're able to master that, we can master the external environment. So how to change the world, an inside job. That topic came to me in the wake of a number of conversations that I've had with people in counseling and different situations, and just observing interactions between people, observing my own interactions with people, and advising people on how to navigate their interactions with people that they come into contact with. And the consistent counsel that I've given has been about maintaining self-awareness, maintaining accountability, being present, and being able to be detached. When we look at the current world state, we often hear people talking about their wishes to change the world, how they want to change things, change how things operate, how to be able to make an impact, how to change others. People are very, very interested in being able to change others, to help others, and there's nothing wrong with being able to help others, but often the focus is on wanting to be able to change others, and therein lies the problem, because we can't change others, we can't change what people do. And so how to change the world, an inside job, really focuses on how we can change ourselves. And so what I mean is, in observing the desire that everyone has to be able to change other people, it brings to light the fact that the majority of people see other people as the problem. But paying attention to ourselves is the faults and issues that we observe where people may attend, or we may attend, a discourse, spiritual discourse, church or whatever, see and hear a powerful message being delivered. And too often the thought comes, that was a great message. Such and such will benefit so much from that. I need to share that message with them. As opposed to, how can I apply this message to benefit me and to change myself for the better? So even when we hear a positive message or read a powerful book, we immediately look for someone that we can share that message with, that we think can benefit from it. We don't spend time in introspection and contemplation and trying to evaluate how we can apply these principles in our lives to make a difference in our lives. And so that's where we're headed with this particular topic is, well, if we want to change the world, we need to begin with ourselves. It's an inside job. And if all of us took that principle to heart, if everyone in the world were to step back and say to themselves or say to ourselves, how can I apply spiritual principles in my life consistently to affect a significant change and continuously walk on that path, we will create a better world. So the problems in the world stem from the fact that most people diagnose others as being the problem. And we think about how we can change and influence others. Even, as we look at the current economic system, the political structures, the world governance structures, and the people who really make the decisions behind the scenes. The planning that goes on has the intent of affecting the behavior of others, being able to control the behavior of others. Even as we looked at the COVID or COVID-19 situation, that was about control. From a number of different aspects, it was about control. Control is an outgrowth of fear. And so, as it pertains to this particular lesson, the fear that people are expressing in that regard is the fear of confronting ourselves, the fear of making change, the fear of really going into a deep analysis and really getting to know and understand ourselves. We're afraid of what we may end up finding. And most of all, we're afraid of stepping out of the comfort of the habits that we've engaged in throughout the course of our lives. We're afraid of change. So many times it is the fact that wanting the desire is not, or is to maintain a state of comfort in the familiar rather than stepping out beyond the realm of the familiar to chart a new course, to go into the unknown. I remember a story being told by one of the swamis who I went to hear speak, and he told the story about these cattle who were grazing inside the fence of this yard. And the cows are grazing, eating the grass, and one of the cows was, as he was grazing, he's leaning against the fence, and he's getting heavier. And as he's leaning on the fence, ultimately the fence ends up breaking. So the cow's getting up and he's looking around and he's outside the fence. And as he's looking out beyond the fence, he can see green pastures for as far as he can see. And his partner cow, who was also leaning on the same fence, he's out there with him. And the partner cow points out to him the endless rows of green grass. And he calls out to his friend. He says, "Hey, man, let's go. Let's get away from here. Look at all that grass. And how the, mm, I don't, I don't want to go. Let's go back inside. And so let's get out of here. We can go out on our own. Okay. Mm, you don't know until we go out there. It's just here. It's coming here. Let's go, man. We fall in love indeed. Mm, what comes against us? Every excuse not to go. And the reason that he's reluctant to go is because he's comfortable. Even though he's noticed that the number of cows have started to decline at time, he's more comfortable where he is because he's accustomed to it. He's afraid to venture out beyond that. When we begin the path of self inquiry, we're going into a place that has been heretofore unknown to us because we've always been looking out. We've been looking out at the external world. To call, and he was relating to me how one of his lady friends who he was in a relationship with is focused on external things as a source of happiness and how um, she wants to have a successful uh, business uh, and have the success in such a way that she becomes a millionaire. She's able to buy a number of houses and horses and have all the components of luxury, believing that those things would end up bringing happiness. But we know that the accumulation of things doesn't in and of itself bring happiness. Whatever happiness comes from that is temporary, and when the effect wears off, people realize that they're still not happy. Many of those people end up committing suicide or just go falling into addiction, still looking for the elusive happiness. And that's what the people who control world affairs, that's the level of consciousness that they operate on, which compels them to hoard things. And they can never have enough. And so it's the greed and selfishness that is behind the decision-making process of those who control things, control what affairs currently. But it goes back to the reluctance to do the inner work, always looking and thinking that changing something externally or changing another person, changing things by uh, replacing them with more expensive things, engaging in competition to try to take something from someone else or to have more than someone else. All these things are driven by ego, by focusing on things external to us in the false hope that by so doing we will bring happiness. But all that ends up doing is creating attachment. And it's attachment that is a source of misery and suffering. And so when we look at the state of the current world affairs, the misery and suffering that is paramount to the experience of so many millions of people, maybe even billions of people throughout the world, is a result of the disinclination for people to focus on the internal, to focus on knowing ourselves and aligning ourselves with the true eternal source of happiness, which is our divinity. And so the chasing after the impermanent, the external, chasing after the material things, uh, even attaining them, ends up, instead of creating the happiness that we're seeking, instead really just creates the experience of misery and suffering, not only for ourselves, but those who end up being affected by our actions. So when we're looking at things on a larger scale, all of the misery and suffering that is currently going on in the world is because of the focus on the accumulation of things, the attachment of things, and that's what's driving those who control things. Because the more they accumulate, the more attached they become to it. The more power that they accumulate, the more attached they become to the power. The more control that they have, the more they become attached to the control. And the more that they accumulate, the more that they become fearful of losing it. All of this is driven by ego. So we've talked before about how the world experience, the world drama, is also a mirror image of the inner battle of the individual. So everything operates on the same principle. So as humanity is on its path of ascension, moving from the golden age down to the dark ages, if you will, and then back on the path of ascension, we see that the golden age represents the period when people, the majority of people, are operating on and in alignment with our higher self, with the divinity. We're being led by spirit. When the cycle of time goes into the descendant path, then we're moving away from humanity operating on the spirit, being driven by the higher spirit or divinity, being guided by divinity. As the cycle goes in its descendant path, then the primary influence becomes more and more driven by ego. And so I recall having a conversation where someone that was expressing, the other person was expressing, why is it that that our people have fallen to where we are. We've lost our consciousness. We've lost our connection. We've lost our sense of who we are. What's happened to bring us to that point, to this point? Well, it's part of the overall cycle, the grand drama. Now, so we can look at it just from the events that have occurred. We know that, like for example, in Kemet, uh, the priesthood ended up getting corrupted. External forces ended up having some influence, uh, but from a larger perspective, look, instead of looking at the events, the decline was a part of the natural cycle that our ancestors had been able to identify through their study of the ages. And they identified recurring patterns when each cycle, when we go through each cycle, and begin the cycle again, these certain patterns repeat themselves at different stages within the cycle, in each cycle. And so it was inevitable that we would move from the golden age and go into the darker ages, which are ego control. And that's where we are in the current cycle. During the golden ages, those who control world affairs are people who are in alignment with divinity. They operate in alignment with divinity. And so You have the priesthood, if you will, or those people who have been divinely inspired, who have attained the state of oneness with spirit, who make up the leadership. And consequently, the decisions made are in alignment with spirit. They're harmonious. They're harmonious amongst humans. They're harmonious with nature. They're harmonious with the animal kingdom, because decisions are spirit driven. As the cycle goes on its descendant path, we begin to, as a group of humanity, lose that connection with spirit and are more and more influenced by ego until we get to the dark period where we have a complete shift. Whereas during the golden age, we had people who are guided by spirit, the higher self, in control of world affairs and making the decisions in leadership capacity. We have an 180-degree difference shift in such a way that those who are in control of world affairs and those who are making decisions, the leadership, are those who are primarily driven by ego, the lower self. That's where we are right now. That's what we see manifested in the activities of the world. That's what we see manifested in terms of the institutions that control things, the individuals who are in those positions. We see that certainly in the leadership here in this country. But for the most part, it's that across the board, because those who are behind the scenes making those decisions are controlled by the lower self or the ego. But now we're beginning the path on the cycle, the ascended part of the path, or the ascended part of the cycle. And people are being drawn more towards spirit, which is creating a conflict with those who are controlled by the lower self or ego. So going back to what it is that we need to do, the first thing that we really need to focus on is getting in tune with our higher self, is to engage in introspection, self-inquiry, to maintain awareness of ourselves, to know ourselves as was inscribed in all the temples throughout the ancient world. And that's what the spiritual teachings are designed to impart to us. That's what our spiritual practices are meant to guide us to transcend from our identification with the physical, with the body, with the external physical things. Not that we disavow any of those things, but we shift our perspective from being attached to those things and placing primary importance on the accumulation of those things under the illusion that they will bring us happiness, to reorienting our consciousness to the awareness that true happiness comes from our connection with divinity. And so we focus on being more divine in our behavior, to do unto others as if we would have others do unto us, to be an example of someone who embodies love, to help others and to serve people selflessly, not motivated by trying to get something in return. And we have a comment. Speaking of the lower spirit controlling some people in the positions of powers, a report just dropped saying Trump's name appears more than 1 million times in the Epstein files. And that speaks to what we're saying about who is in power. And mind you, this is not just about Trump or Epstein, because there are groups of people who control all of them, including Trump and Epstein. And we've touched on that before. And I've mentioned before as well that I believe that Epstein was an intelligence asset. And I actually don't use the term past tense, because I don't believe that he offed himself. I believe he was extracted from prison. But the fact that Trump would be named 1 million times in the Epstein files is indicative of the fact that he is a pawn and was entrapped in engaging in compromising activities, because his character was already known, and it was known that he was inclined to be able to that he was inclined and predisposed to that type of behavior. So it would be easy to draw him into that and to be able to use him as a pawn to be able to carry out the things that he's been directed to do. And we will go into that, because again, spirituality is not a escape from life. It's a means to be able to navigate life more effectively. So we will pick that up again. I'm not sure which, Brother Jamal can tell me which episode of Trump Insider or Establishment that will be on when we do pick it up. But I wanted to just bring us back to focusing within, because that's where we are really going to be able to make a change. Um, and we've seen that by the effect that those who are in control has had on the state of the world, that we can see what the manifestation of that is when we look at that current state of the world. When people are being controlled by the lower nature forces, we see the evidence of how that ends up affecting uh, the world and the environment around us. Right. So if we want to change the world, again, it's for us to be able to live the live according to the principles, to live according to the golden rule, to treat people as if we would have them treat us, to be a living example of love, to be selfless in our actions in helping people uh, just because we want to help them, and not because we're seeking recognition for it or even acknowledgement for the fact that we're helping people, that we're doing it selflessly because that's we want to do and contribute to the upliftment of humanity. We want to inspire people with positive words, to uplift people, not to change people, and being mindful that if we do want to have a positive influence on people, it is by setting a positive example through how we live our own lives. That's how we change the world. It is an inside job, because when we change ourselves, we have a positive effect on the world in that, one, we're setting a positive example. Two, we're putting out a positive vibration from our thoughts, from our words, from our emotions, and from our actions. Because all those things carry forth a vibration that affects everything around us. Needless to say, the vibration that is predominant in the world today is negative because of what is motivated by those actions. And by and large, what's motivating the actions of the majority of the people in the world, particularly those in control, are ego-based motivations. And Brother Jamal points out that the next Trump episode will be number 18. And before we close out today, I'm going to also give a heads up as to what else we're going to cover on the on our upcoming show. So we're working on material for um, Donald Trump Insider Establishment, Part 18. Um, and I'll go ahead and mention it. We're also working on a show where we will discuss Ron, otherwise known as Milana Karenga, and the reason that we want to go into that. Um, is because he has currently uh, experienced a resurgence in interest in prominence, particularly here in the Los Angeles area, which is particularly disconcerting because of the um, because of what has because of his history. We'll just say that because of his history in terms of uh, how he was used in the to bring down the not just the Panthers, but to counteract the I would say the Black Power movement, the movement for Black liberation. That he was used effectively as a tool to undermine the advance of Black people in America. So we will go into that. We'll have a guest who can speak to that, particularly even just the whole illusion about uh, the creation of Kwanzaa. We'll talk about that and actually show who was involved in the creation of Kwanzaa and that it was not just uh, Ron Karinga. Um, so we'll just bring some truth and and provide some information to cast a proper light on uh, on him, cast a better light, a focus on Kwanzaa, so that people can make more informed decisions and have much better insight on how everything is unfolded. Because we need to be able to have information, be able to make better decisions, and many of the things that we go through as a people, particularly um, the Black people here in this country, um, we have been manipulated by propaganda, false information, had information hidden from us. And so we need to be able to have some uh, illumination. And so, we want to try to play a small part in bringing forth illumination to some things. Uh, and that's one of the things that we'll be working on. And, much props and to other people who are in their different lines of work, bringing forth illumination. Uh, Shout out to our brother Siddiqui Bakari, who's doing excellent work um, on illuminating the effect of AI uh, and what uh, their ultimate aim is with that. We may end up having him on as well. So there's a lot of things that we're working on the show. Uh, but I digress. So to get back to our topic, changing the world is an individual responsibility. When we are inclined to want to change others, we are basically shirking our responsibilities for ourselves. We're avoiding taking responsibility and being accountable. Um, I found myself sometimes being frustrated with the inclination of people, some of my counterparts, some of the people who I interact with, uh, and being somewhat frustrated in the fact that they feel like it's their responsibility to point out others' faults and to try to hold other people accountable, which is really, it's really a waste of time. It's not for us to hold anybody accountable. That'll take care of itself. It's our job to hold ourselves accountable. It's our job to hold ourselves to uphold principles. If we want to live by the principles of mind, we have to live by them individually. We It's not for us to try to uh, hold anyone else to account for that. We have to set that example. We have to do it. And we're certainly not in a position to be able to tell anybody else how to uh, put principles into practice in their lives if we're not doing it. So, I hope that doesn't sound harsh, but that's truth. We if we want to affect change, and this, really, this is so rampant in our culture that it it's affecting every aspect of our lives. It affects how we interact with each other in business. It affects how we interact with each other in relationships. It affects our ability to be able to function effectively in organizations, because we're being controlled by the lower self. We're being controlled by ego, in that ego is disinclined to have us engage in self inquiry and engage in accountability, engage in self awareness. It wants us to be able to avoid connecting with our higher self because it will lose control. And so we've lost our way because we've allowed ourselves to be controlled by ego. And in mimicking those who embody that consciousness, those who are in control of world affairs, we're emulating them. And that's why we're in the state that we're in. Because when we emulate them too often, we do a better job of it than they do. So if we want to change the state, or particularly the state of our own community, then we have to practice ways of our ancestors, putting the principles that we've learned into practice in our lives. If we ascribe to living according to the principles of Ma'at, to the virtues of Ma'at, we have to demonstrate those in our lives. If we want to confess our innocence, we have to be able to confess our innocence, the negative confessions. We have to be able to recite those without with a good conscience, to say, I have not stolen, I have not uh, um, engaged with my neighbor's wife, or what have you. We have to be able to say those things in good conscience. Whatever spiritual principles, and ultimately all the spiritual principles come from the same source. We have to live according to those. And if we individually live according to the spiritual principles, we will have the effect of making a positive change in the world. So, with that, I will end How to Change the World, an inside job. If we want to change the world, we need to change ourselves. So, with that, I would encourage you to visit my website, which is www.sa-ra.org. And if you are in need of or would like to work with me in terms of counseling, do reach out to me and set up an appointment on that website. Or you can reach out to me on Facebook and Sarah. So either way, we can set up an appointment with you. And I think you can also find a link to my 2 books. And I'll also commit to putting out a couple more books this year. And I highly encourage those books because the people who have purchased those books recently have expressed to me how beneficial they have been in helping them along in their path, because they find that whatever page they turn to benefits them on that particular day. So I would encourage you to also reach out for and get that book. You can find the link again on my website, sa-ra.org, or you can find it on Amazon. Just look for Sarah's Book of Light. All right. So thank you for joining us here on Journey into Self, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time here. And we'll go back to our revelation of Trump and those who control him and other things in the world. Just to demonstrate, the purpose of that show is not so much to focus on him, but it's really to underscore that he is operating in the same way that all of his predecessors did, and is controlled by the exact same forces that he has said that he is trying to rid the system of drain the swamp. He's not draining the swamp, he's part of the swamp. So we'll go back into that in the future. So with that, thank you for joining us here on Journey into Self, and we'll see you next time. Hotep.